Astronomy is all about a journey that's been going on since people first looked at the night sky. In Australia, the Aboriginal people have been looking at the sky for tens of thousands of years. They're probably the oldest and the first astronomers on the planet. Over the last 400 years, astronomy's been on a really exciting journey, starting from when we first looked at the sky through telescopes. This is the Hubble Space Telescope, the crowning achievement, if you like, of optical astronomy in the last century. It's a telescope which can look at the universe with great clarity. This is because it's above the Earth's atmosphere. It's the prime instrument we've used to venture far out into the universe. So why do we need a telescope to find out what's out there? We all have eyeballs, and those eyeballs have a pupil, the black hole in the middle of our eye, which is about 5 millimeters across. That's our window on the outside world. That's where the light from the world around us gets into our brain. What would happen if our eye was 5 times bigger? So instead of our window to the world being 5 millimeters across, our window to the world would be 25 millimeters across. Increasing the size of the pupil from 5 millimeters to 25 millimeters is a 5-fold increase. But something which is 25 millimeters in diameter, as opposed to something which is 5 millimeters in diameter, collects 25 divided by 5 squared times more light. In other words, 25 times more light can get into that very big eyeball. So if we had a clever way of making eyeballs a lot bigger, we'd have a much bigger window on the universe. And that's exactly what Galileo did. About 400 years ago, in 1609, Galileo was the first astronomer to use a telescope to look at the sky. He had a very small telescope. This small telescope, however, allowed him to collect much more light than he could normally collect just using his eyes. In fact, he made his eyes about 25 times more powerful by using the telescope. The book you see here is one of Galileo's books. It has a picture of a star field. There are some stars there which he drew as multiple pointed stars, just like you draw yourself. There are lots of small black stars as well. The big stars are what you can see with your unaided eye if you just looked at the night sky. Galileo, with his telescope, could see many, many more stars. All of a sudden, Galileo's universe and man's universe became a lot richer, a lot bigger, with many, many more objects to look at. Not only did he look at the stars, he looked at other familiar things like the moon. On the moon he saw mountains, valleys and craters, things which look very much like valleys and mountains on the Earth. And so all of a sudden the moon looked a bit like the Earth. People started to think about the moon as a place just like the Earth. And so people's ideas about the solar system and about other planets started to develop because they could see familiar things. Over time, the number of eyeballs we've used to look at the sky has increased. In this graph, we can see the size of telescopes we've been developing and using over time. Staying with the eyeball idea, this graph shows their power and performance being equal to a number of eyeballs. On the far left is a gentleman called Tycho Brahe. Tycho used his eyes to look at the sky and observe the universe. In the early 1600s, Galileo began to use the telescope to observe objects in the night sky. Although he did not invent the telescope, his discoveries paved the way for bigger and bigger telescopes to be built. The gentleman in the middle is William Herschel, who built a telescope in the 1700s which had a diameter of about 60 centimeters. That's equivalent to several tens of thousands of eyeballs. During his life, he constructed over 400 telescopes, the biggest and most famous being a reflecting telescope with a diameter of 126 centimeters. On its first night of operation, he discovered a new moon of Saturn. William Herschel also discovered Uranus. As time went on, telescopes became bigger as new technology became available. In the early 1920s, Edwin Hubble observed distant galaxies using the 100-inch Hooker telescope on Mount Wilson in California. The Hubble Space Telescope is named after him, as his work was the first to show that the universe is expanding. More recently, an array of very large 8-metre telescopes has been built in northern Chile. These telescopes have a collecting power in eyeball terms of more than 1 million. So our eyes in the sky have actually increased with time. Every 20 years or so, the size of our telescope doubles and our ability to probe the universe increases. Astronomers have also developed telescopes that can detect radio waves. Radio telescopes look very different to optical telescopes. We commonly call them dishes. Now, this development is an important step for astronomy because radio waves give us different information about the universe we live in. Australia has a strong history in radio astronomy, and a new radio telescope named ASCAP is being built in the Murchison region of Western Australia. The Murchison Radio Astronomy Observatory may well become the home to the massive international radio telescope, the Square Kilometre Array, a project that will enable astronomy's journey to continue well into the future.